Okay, let's try to do a little stabilizing meditation first of all and set a good motivation. Sit comfortably. Put your attention on the breathing. See if even in the face of obstacles you can ignore them. Bring your attention to the breathing. And when the mind's slightly quieted, gravitate to your heart chakra. Follow a breath down or just bring your attention there, away from the cerebral region. And just act to watch your mind. First of all, noticing the thoughts that come through, recognizing some of them as future-oriented, thoughts of the future. Some are memories related with the past. Some are perhaps related with the present, observations or judgments about the present. Noting them may give you a way of letting them go once you've noticed them. It's not an activity of your eye consciousness. See if you can focus on the quiet of the mind, moments of quiet in between thoughts. Begin to develop an understanding, an intuition of that nature of the mind, clear light, although not just a mental image of it, conceptual construct. All our thoughts, all our mental activities, our self-cherishing, our self-grasping, all arise within this clear light nature of our mind. Although they're kind of mental events, they're not the fundamental nature of the mind. They can be removed. Clouds and birds are in the sky, but they're not the nature of the sky. Even the sense of your body, although seemingly irrefutably present, and sometimes when you're paying attention to that, that's just appearing to your mental consciousness, the spaciousness of your mind as a thought. Let go of that and try to sense the space of the mind within which it's arising. Likewise with the ego, the observer. You cannot let go of that. Just dissolve into the spaciousness of your mind. Within this quiet clarity of the mind, think of all living beings like ourselves, wanting to be free of suffering, wanting to be happy, not wanting even the smallest criticism or discomfort. So many of them, numberless sentient beings, still bound in cyclic existence, even if they're experiencing some relative peace right now, bound to change. Their time, their lifespans quickly finishing, virtuous karma being expended as fuel for some relief within cyclic existence. creating more negative karma. The majority of those in cyclic existence experiencing gross suffering, the hells, the spirit realm, the pretas, animal realm. My own mother, each and every one of them can be recognized as my own mother. Numberless times in the past, just as my present mother has been my mother in the past numberless times. Likewise with each and every sentient being. Recalling the kindness of the present mother, how it's in the past multiplied, depthlessly kind. All living beings are exactly the same in having been kind to us. Now trapped in cyclic existence, we have an opportunity, having met the teachings, having a life of leisure and endowment, some faith in the teachings, having met Mahayana friends that can guide us along the path. As much as possible this life, I'm going to try to use it for the welfare of others. Particularly in this evening, I'm going to listen to the teachings on the Mahayana thought transformation, the wheel of sharp weapons. In order to develop the qualities to get closer to enlightenment, in order to achieve enlightenment, so that I can benefit all sentient beings. And relax. Bring your attention back. So, how's everyone? Been listening to the war news?
Oh, the war is crazy.
Makes it hard to sit.
Yeah. This is a good, maybe this what we're doing now might be better spent than listening to CNN for the next 2 hours or whatever. So anyone have any questions or observations from last time? This, of course, is in case you've walked into the wrong room. This is the class on the... You're in the right room? This lady? Yeah? You're not sure? Okay. The wheel...
It's the right room.
Okay, this is the right room. If you're here, it's the right room. This is the class on the wheel of sharp weapons, which is a text written by great Indian master Dharma Rakshita, who was a guru of Atisha. We talked last time a bit about his authoring this text, who he was, and so forth. So today we're going to get into the actual verses of it. I'm just wondering if any from last time, any questions? Okay. So, we have the text begins, homage to the three jewels. What are the three jewels? Hmm? Ruby, absinthe, and emerald? Whatever.
Me, myself, and I.
Me, myself, and I.
That's what Amy always says.
The three jewels, me, myself. Some years ago, there was a text from the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives that was being reviewed by Dr. Nick Ribish, and the book had a misprint. It said, "The Three Jews of Refuge." And he said, okay, Landau and Berzin are two, but who's the third? Maybe you don't know who they are, two of our dear friends. So the three jewels of refuge are, of course, what? The Buddha jewel. Actually, Buddha jewel is a little bit different than Buddha, isn't it? We'll go on some other occasions, we'll talk a little more in detail about that. Buddha jewel, Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel. They're actually defined, they have very specific definitions. So basically paying homage to them in order to be successful in composing this text, and for ourselves in studying this text at the beginning, paying homage to the three jewels. Lord Shakyamuni, Buddha, representative of all the Buddhas who over three countless eons exemplified all of the teachings that we're talking about here. And the Dharma that he realized in his own mind, not just some doctrine that he sort of made up or whatever, that he actually encountered from other Buddhas of the past and past lifetimes and actualized, and the Sangha of Arya beings that he helped to institute in his lifetime. So this is called the wheel. Here it's translated in this text, the wheel weapon that strikes the enemy's vital spot. Remember we talked about this last time. Or you could say the wheel of sharp weapons. I bow down to the great wrathful one, Yamantaka. Did we mention this last time? You know who Yamantaka is? The wrathful aspect of Manjushri. And there's a definitive Yamantaka and just the sort of representational or conventional Yamantaka. Yamantaka is perhaps the conventional Yamantaka is the appearance within bliss and void of this wrathful being within a person's mind stream. That appearance. The definitive Yamantaka or Yamantaka is the wisdom, exalted wisdom of all the Buddhas. And especially as here, Yamantaka, in this very wrathful form to help put the wisdom into rapid actualization. So we'll be talking about that a bit. It's kind of interesting that this author who was purportedly a practitioner of the Hinayana, actually is making allusion to Yamantaka right at the beginning of the text, isn't it? Which is not only Mahayana teaching, actually tantric teachings. So it sounds as though he was one of those exceptional individuals who, like Atisha, was originally trained in the sutra teachings of the Shravakayana, the hearer's vehicle and so forth, and then also encountered the Mahayana teachings as has happened at the great monasteries of India at the time. There was a cross-fertilization, and was practicing, had occasion to practice and was practicing Tantra secretly, had obviously great realization of that that's very much the flavor of these first 6 verses. So, first verse starts out, when peacocks roam the jungle of virulent poisons, the flocks take no delight in gardens of medicinal plants, no matter how beautiful they may be, For peacocks thrive on the essence of virulent plants, poisonous plants. Virulent poison, strong poison. So I think some of the people who've commented on this, I'm not sure if it's in the academic commentary at the beginning by the translators, certainly not Geshe-la, not Geshe-soba, but sometimes people might quibble and say, "Oh, this is just like a Tibetan legend that the peacocks live on poisonous plants." You know this particular analogy that's being referred to? Do you know what it's talking about? Venerable?
Not when I read it first off.
Oh, but you read some. Good. I was just checking. I'm sure you read. Do you know what the implication here is that there are some animals, the peacocks, in India. You've all seen peacocks, right? You know, peacocks, very beautiful, huge tails with, like on the cover of the book, with these many different eyes. Actually, the eyes of the peacock feathers are often used to talk about karma. Often when we do puja, one of the reasons that they're exhibited is because the Buddha explained in some circumstances that every single color of the eye of the peacock's feather, every shade, every luminescent difference comes about from some karmic deed that individual peacock had performed in the past. Now you might say, well, it came about because of genetics. But there's no contradiction for that particular mind stream to be born in that body that had that particular predisposition to have that, every shade like that required certain karma. So the peacock feathers sometimes represent an understanding of karma, manifestation of that. Here the peacocks are said to have this particular quality of living in an area that other animals cannot thrive in. Sometimes it's said that they thrive on the cobras. What else? Is it mongoose also that can? It's faster than cobra. Is able to. So I never saw any mongoose. Is that right? In what?
Black and aconite that they can live
Oh
on.
yeah, maybe that's what the scholars are saying, right?
Highly toxic plant.
There's legend that they can live off they can actually fight off the poisonous cobras. So that's one kind of meaning of poison. Or here the implication is the plants themselves. They can live in the poisonous garden, and in consuming either the cobras or these poisonous plants, they become even more beautiful. Now, whether that's literally true or not, this is just the analogy that's being used. It doesn't have to be necessarily true for this analogy to be used to explain our purpose here. So the peacock is supposed to be, in this case, analogous to the bodhisattva. First of all, the bodhisattva, the sutra practicing bodhisattva, the bodhisattva who's practicing the bodhisattva yana in this context, but also there's an indication sort of all through these verses that it's also talking about the tantric practice. A bodhisattva who's practicing the tantric levels. Can I say that? Would someone who's practicing the tantra be called a bodhisattva?
I think it's a prerequisite, isn't it?
What do you think? You couldn't call him or her a bodhisattva, you'd have to call them a tantrika or what? What do you think, Dorji?
Aspiring bodhisattva.
Someone who's
They'd have to be a bodhisattva.
they'd have to be a bodhisattva?
At
Well,
least aspiring bodhisattva.
at least a bodhisattva, aspiring. Certainly, one couldn't practice in any way, one couldn't practice Tantra in any way that it actually would bring its result unless you actually had within your mind stream bodhicitta, unless you developed bodhicitta. And as many of you are phrasing your answer quite correctly, I think that You can still practice to some degree, even aspiring. Even if we're not yet a bodhisattva, even if we have not developed spontaneous bodhicitta. And here I'm not talking, when I say aspiring, I'm not talking about aspiring bodhicitta versus engaging bodhicitta, but someone who is even just wishing to be a bodhisattva, not even wishing to attain enlightenment, just, at our level, we're not yet, maybe we have not yet developed spontaneous bodhicitta. So the peacock that is analogous to that kind of bodhisattva, because in the sutra path, there are allusions in the bodhisattva literature that the bodhisattvas remain in cyclic existence for the welfare of others, and they use their afflictions before they're actually fully eliminated. They use them for the welfare of sentient beings, and they use them to enhance their practice. And there are many ways that they do that. So there's different ways of understanding this, I think. One way you can talk about the afflictions in their own minds. Another way you can talk about the afflictions like the poison that they encounter outside within cyclic existence. Like harmful minds and people with great attachment and so forth on one level. I think mainly it's talking about the utilizing these things which are otherwise poisonous, utilizing these states of mind in their own continua. Right? But you can also understand it, I think, of when one practices the bodhisattva path, one of the things that one tries to do is to utilize the otherwise adverse conditions, transform the adverse conditions into attributes of the path, into helping oneself. How was it? I think Amy was using it very well the other night. What was she saying? Were you here for her talk the other night? She has some phrase that she uses. Who knows her? How she's been talking. Rather than seeing it as a problem, seeing it as an opportunity or something like that. She's often talking. This is very much the kind of attitude that a bodhisattva would try to take in the outer circumstances. So what might seem to us in a degenerate age, what might seem to us to be some kind of problematic obstacle, people criticizing us, or there being trouble in the world and war and economic disruption and so forth, the bodhisattva is able to recognize all of those circumstances in a certain way, in different ways, in ways that allow the bodhisattva to actually enhance their own practice. So those are different things that we'll be talking about the outer, how to encounter the outer world. But somehow the flavor of these first verses is a little bit, almost a little more on the tantric side. So talking about how an individual, a courageous being like the bodhisattva, like the peacock, is able to use their own poisonous minds, which for a lesser being, someone who's not trained in renunciation or bodhicitta, cultivating attachment, for instance, cultivating anger, is that going to help you get out of cyclic existence in general? Okay. Like sometimes people would like to practice, they hear about Tantra and they think, oh yes, the path of attachment. Hey, that sounds good. That's for me. Was it sex, drugs, and rock and roll? And so actually it's very, very difficult to be able to utilize, and this is kind of I believe the context here. This is talking, there's an interplay, I think, between the sutra and tantra interpretations, because this individual who composed the text is learned in all of the different traditions. But there's definitely a tantric flavor here, as the homages made to Yamantaka, that the bodhisattva, once one has developed a certain amount of renunciation, once one has a firm grounding in renunciation and a real aspiration to benefit others, there's a possibility to utilize in the practice of Tantra even one's own otherwise poisonous afflictions into enhancing one's own practice. But that's not something that we can go into detail about here. That's something that you would study in the context of receiving a tantric initiation. But maybe those of you who are so initiated or empowered and have heard teachings like that before, you can start to draw certain allusions to what's being referred to here. I think certain things we can talk about. Desire, for instance. There is a certain way in the tantric vehicle of utilizing desire, for instance, in order to eliminate it. I'll give another example, first of all. It's said that sometimes, I may have mentioned last time, debate. Did we talk a little bit about debate in the Tibetan tradition, the monastic tradition? Debate seemed to fit the Tibetan psyche very much in the monastic education, because as one was a beginner in debate, one's ego got very much involved in it. You didn't want to lose, right? And so you would come back and you'd study, in order to be able to not be humiliated in the debating courtyard. I remember when we were at Kopan Monastery in the mid-70s, after we'd taken ordination, and we would have, Lama had have a discussion every evening, the Sangha. Someone would have to sit in the hot seat and answer questions, and other people would sort of be authoritative and ask questions as though to trip the person up. And there would be very good debates sometime back and forth. Maybe even the tempers would flare a bit. But we would come back to our rooms, and everyone was by candlelight trying to check up whether we'd made any mistakes, so we could salvage our egos the next evening. So in a sense, in debate, one is using the ego to eventually eliminate the ego. Does that make some sense? Because in so doing, as you study, as your analytic wisdom develops because of that particular interest, it actually, at a certain point, you start to refine your motivation, and your motivation isn't as it was perhaps at the very beginning, as a very, just as an ordinary being that's driven by pride and ego and so forth. So that's kind of one kind of example. In the tantric path also, there's a way of utilizing desire as a means to destroy desire by desire focusing on objects that are pleasurable, right? We desire pleasurable things. When you encounter pleasure, not utilizing it in the ordinary way, but having been prepared in Tantra through meditation, through familiarization, unifying that experience of some blissful sensation with a remembering consciousness of ultimate truth, of emptiness, perhaps a very, very subtle one that one has cultivated in meditation. So it's as though every time one encounters any kind of pleasure, one of the kind of tantric disciplines is to encounter that in a certain way, to utilize that in a certain way in which one recalls emptiness, egolessness, and therefore undermines the cause of the desire, the attachment which was causing this. To be able to do that, though, say to utilize sexual desire or desire for other kinds of pleasures, to utilize that in the path. One of my teachers many years ago told me, you really have to be able to do that, you really have to have a certain sense of renunciation. Otherwise, it's just silly. It's like playing doctor, when you're kids. If you have a real sense of renunciation, then you're not going to be expecting the pleasure to really give you some lasting satisfaction. Your mind is not going to be fantasizing about it in the same way, but you're immediately going to be able to utilize that into an antidote that can help to eliminate the root cause. So that is a very special individual. That kind of individual that's practicing in that way is like this proverbial peacock that's able to utilize the poisons and make itself even more glorious. Other kinds of beings, like ourselves, that find ourselves encountering, well, it's possible also in Tantra to utilize anger into the path. Is that right? Or is that not true? Do you think? What do you think? It's possible to use anger in the path?
Trample him, stamp on his head.
Okay, maybe something, maybe, I'm not sure. Okay, certainly there's some allusion in the Tantras to utilizing, the main thing Tantra is sometimes called the path of desire. Usually it's quite clear that one can utilize desire, not necessarily gross attachment, but desire, which is an offshoot of that, general sort of, what would you say, rather than full-fledged attachment, sort of like preference. I prefer to have this. I'd like to have this, but not attached to it. But it is possible in some of the tantras to utilize some of the other afflictions also to enhance one's certain states of mind. In the sutra vehicle, the main thing, excuse me, in the sutra vehicle, I think the main thing is desire, using desire as an attribute of the path. They don't talk about it in the same way as in the tantric vehicle, utilizing desire in the same way. But they don't talk about in the sutra path utilizing hatred and anger and so forth, other kinds of delusions in the path in the same way that it is mentioned in the bodhisattva path, in the tantric path. So here the peacock refers to the bodhisattva, perhaps the tantric bodhisattva. The jungle of virulent poisons is referring to cyclic existence, both external cyclic existence and the cyclic existence within our own continuum. Because basically, what is cyclic existence? Is cyclic existence a place? Samsara? Like, can you get a bus ticket out of here?
That's why we're here.
That's why you're here? You want to get your pass out of samsara. What is cyclic existence? What is samsara? Do you know, Beth?
Being born again and again, being born and suffering and existing and dying and I don't know.
That's what?
Over and over again, forever.
Was it I don't know? That was the definition? Or that was pretty good. Actually, that was about, yeah. It sounded like that was all part of the answer. I don't know. Not knowing, yeah. Not knowing, taking rebirth without control again and again. That's kind of like the flavor of cyclic existence, what we find ourselves in. So cyclic existence is not a place necessarily. To the Buddhas who might encounter this particular location where we're at, they don't experience this as cyclic existence. So this does not appear naturally as an impediment. It depends on a person's mind. This is not necessarily cyclic existence. Cyclic existence is within one's own mind. So in the jungle of virulent, they roam in the jungle of virulent poisons. So in a sense, the bodhisattvas, thank you, Dorche, very kind. Dorche. They roam in the jungle of their own mind. Actually, boy, for my mind, I don't know about your mind, that's a real jungle. Ordinary people, if we roam in our own minds, we just allow ourselves to engage all of these different transient states that arise in the space of our mind. The angry state, the attached state, the expectation state, the pride state. We will be destroyed like the non-peacock in the virulent garden, right? Who tries to eat those plants. I think that's kind of one of the flavors here. So when the peacocks roam the jungle of virulent poison, means outside and inside, the flocks take no delight in the gardens of medicinal plants, no matter how beautiful they may be, for peacocks thrive on the essence of virulent poison. So the bodhisattvas, they don't take interest in the pleasures of samsara in the same way that we ordinary beings do. So let's say in the case of the analogy here, the peacock on the one hand and ordinary birds or animals on the other hand, they're more interested in eating the tasty, I don't know, what are these different flowers, like our deers that come down here, right? They're not interested in eating the poisonous plants. They want to eat, what are they eating? The daisies, you said?
They don't like to eat the daisies.
Oh, they don't like to eat the daisies. Okay, they love roses. Okay, so maybe the daisies are kind of like the analogy here to the poisonous plants that the bodhisattvas can thrive on. So what we ordinary people desire are the pleasures of cyclic existence. That's what we want to get. We want to get money. We want to have friends and companions that tell us how much they love us. We want to have companions that stay with us and take care of us. We want to have power, pleasure of the senses. The bodhisattvas, because of the combination of bodhicitta and renunciation and bodhicitta, they see all of those ordinary attractions, sort of like the medicinal plants, as uninteresting. They have great renunciation. I think I've mentioned this example before of someone bringing a big bale of hay before a lion. A lion sitting there, the king or queen of the jungle, and you bring a big pile of hay and place it before them. They just sort of look completely uninterested, right? That's kind of like how the bodhisattvas would react in general to the allurements of cyclic existence. They're uninterested in becoming famous and so forth themselves. And whereas the ordinary beings who take that as their prime aim, pleasures and money and fame and love and sensual enjoyment and so forth, that kind of individual who takes that as their main aim wouldn't be able to practice Tantra. They wouldn't be able to take the virulent poisons, attachment and so forth. They're not able to utilize them. So they're destroyed. They're destroyed by that kind of practice, ordinary beings. So the second verse says, sort of explaining about the meaning of that. So the first verse says, when the peacocks roam in the jungle of virulent poison, the flocks take no delight in the gardens of medicinal plants, no matter how beautiful they may be, for peacocks thrive on the essence of virulent poison. Similarly, when the heroes roam the jungle of cyclic existence, they do not become attached to the garden of happiness and prosperity, no matter how beautiful it may be, for heroes thrive in the jungle of suffering. How nice it would be to be able to be like that. The heroes here are referring to who? Bodhisattvas, because in the etymology of the word bodhisattva, sattva, sometimes the word sattva means just being, like we say semchen in Tibetan, just a sentient being, sattva. But in the combination bodhisattva, there's another meaning of sattva which doesn't mean only being, but it means courageous being. So sometimes when we say sattva, we're talking about a courageous being, because when we say Jangshub's, when we say Dorje Sempa, do you know who Dorje Sempa is? Vajrasattva. We have Dorje Sempa, Vajrasattva on the tanka over there on the wall. Vajrasattva, Dorje Sempa. Sempa there is the pa is the courageous-minded one. So sattva doesn't mean just a person with a mind, semchen. It means someone with a courageous mind. So that's kind of the meaning here of the hero, someone who is heroic in this greater sense, not heroic in the world to go into Iraq and bomb and, give your life or something for your, whatever, for your country. That's not, from a bodhisattva's point of view, that's not necessarily very heroic. The heroes have incredible courage to be able to confront their own delusions, to utilize them when need be, to try to fight with them when need be, and to be able to utilize in this degenerate age all of the virulent poisons into the path. That's very heroic. That's kind of in the text by Shantideva, the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. You know that text, right? I like to call it the spiritual commando guide. The Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. What do you think? Because it's yeah, the hero. A commando should be someone, or would it be commanda for the feminine? I'm not sure. Anyway, commando. I'm joking. What?
Change the O to an A for
You would?
the Spanish.
Oh, the Spanish. Okay, commanda. Maybe in Latin or something. Commando is someone who's got to be courageous to fight the enemy, to do so with all sorts of skillful means. And that's very much, I think, the flavor of the Bodhisattva. So I think of it, the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, engaging in the activities of the Bodhisattva, kind of like sometimes translated as the Bodhisattva's handbook. You could call it spiritual commando's handbook. So similarly, when the heroes roam the jungle of cyclic existence, they do not become attached to the garden of happiness and prosperity, no matter how beautiful it may be, for heroes thrive in the jungle of suffering. The bodhisattvas remain in cyclic existence out of compassion. There's a famous verse in the Prajnaparamita, in the commentary of the Prajnaparamita and the Abhisamayalankara, also I think alluded to in the text itself, about how the bodhisattvas, they don't fall into the peace of nirvana, and they don't fall into the defects of cyclic existence. Those are the two extremes, in a sense, that they would try to avoid. The peace of nirvana, that's actually a shortcoming from the bodhisattva's point of view. Not only the perfections of samsara, but even the goal of the Hinayana path. That would be a shortcoming to them. And not remaining in cyclic existence due to this combination of method and wisdom, skillful means, compassion, bodhicitta on one hand, and wisdom that realizes ultimate reality on the other. So they actually have a long-term aim of remaining in cyclic existence, in the garden of suffering, in the jungle of suffering. They thrive within it, and that is the very special quality. So this is really talking about bodhisattvas. You might think, well, that sounds, who wants to remain in suffering? This is what the bodhisattvas, for the sake of sentient beings, they remain within cyclic existence, out of compassion for sentient beings, out of their bodhicitta to achieve enlightenment for their sake. Because in order to benefit sentient beings, you have to accumulate the merit to do so. You have to be around for sentient beings. You have to be there to be generous. You have to be there to be patient, to overcome your shortcomings and so forth. My teacher, Lama Yeshe, I remember when Lama Zopa Rinpoche, after Lama had passed away, this is my karma. After Lama had passed away, Lama Zopa Rinpoche had said one of Lama's extraordinary qualities was the fact that he had no interest in the affairs of in the perfections of cyclic existence. Thank you. Thank you. This is kind of like the poisons of cyclic existence. I don't know, it must be ink or something, or licorice. I don't know. It must be ink. we meet people like that sometimes. That was one of the things that probably some of you who knew Lama, maybe that attracted us to him. The fact that it didn't make any difference whether other people saw him as speaking correctly. He wasn't so concerned about having perfect grammar or how he looked to others. He was only concerned with helping others. I remember the first time at Kopan Monastery, when I met Lama, I had been taking a course with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and Lama Yeshe was returning back from one of his first tours to the West, and there was a big procession, and everyone was all excited, all of the Kopan monks and some of the lamas that were there, and the Western Sangha that had been there before me. They were all talking about this Lama Yeshe, very special being. Oh, Lama Yeshe, someone very special. My negative mind was thinking, who's this? What are they? Lama Zopa's where it's at. Who's this Lama Yeshe? And when Lama Yeshe came, and Lama Lundup, who's still now I think the abbot at Kopan, made prostration in the dirt, right in the dusty road in front of Lama in his clean robes. I thought, whoa, what are these people doing? This must be they must think this guy is special, but what is he? So I had this kind of skeptical mind, maybe more than skeptical. What would you call it? Cynical mind, And Lama was going to give a lecture, and so we went to the lecture. And someone asked. I remember during the lecture, someone asked a question, and I thought Lama didn't understand the question because the answer didn't seem to, answer the question. And so smart aleck here raised his hand, said, excuse me, you didn't understand. The question was this, and this. And Lama smiled and answered again. And I thought, for a moment, I thought, oh, he still didn't understand. And then it dawned on me. Lama's answer was actually answering a question in my own mind. What motivated me to do this was actually, didn't care if he looked like he was making a mistake to others. His only intention was to benefit. And I completely melted that. It was like my attitude from cynical to incredible faith, maybe because of some connection with Lama in many previous lifetimes, just sort of some kind of action like that. So the bodhisattvas, the heroic bodhisattvas, they thrive on the outer suffering of others. That is the grist for their mill, to be able to develop patience and compassion all the time. They remain in cyclic existence for that reason. And also, in the tantric sense, they utilize the poisons in their own mind. So here again, I think you can read it in two different ways. You can read it in terms of the tantric interpretation or the sutra interpretation. Therefore, third verse, it is due to cowardice that persons avidly pursue their own happiness and so come to suffer. And it is due to heroism that bodhisattvas, willingly taking the suffering of others onto themselves, are always happy. So, all of the people like ourselves that have not yet, like myself, I don't know about you, maybe all of you are bodhisattvas. Sometimes there is that doubt. We often think about this as one of the ways of maybe benefiting your own mind, thinking, maybe I'm the only sentient being left. And everyone else in the universe, the manifestations of Buddha, is kind of a charade for my benefit. You're all sitting here pretending, reading the books and taking notes or something, and actually giving me the chance to talk about Dharma. I'm the last. I could be the last one left. Clayton making the puja table, giving me the chance to say, oh, it could be a little higher, a little lower, this or that. Completely already Buddhist. I don't know. It could be. So beings like myself who are cowards, coward here is obviously the opposite of the heroic bodhisattva, right? Those who aren't able to use the outer poisons of cyclic existence, don't yet have bodhicitta, It is due to that cowardice, that lack of heroism, that people like myself avidly pursue our own happiness. We want everything, as my teacher, Geshe Soquel, often says at the beginning of courses, incredibly moving kind of preamble to his set of lectures, often just how most of us, we always only think of ourselves. We always expect others to love us. We always want to be seen as right. If you think about it, that's very much our own self-preservation, our own sense of preserving ourselves, enhancing ourselves. That's due to cowardice, or is that right? Cowardice. I was going to say cowardiceness. There's no word. No, cowardice. That is due to cowardice. These non-heroic people like myself avidly pursue our own happiness and so come to suffer. Because in pursuing our own happiness, we do so out of self-cherishing thought and we do so out of self-grasping. It is due to heroism that bodhisattvas willingly take the suffering of others onto themselves. Willingly taking the suffering of others onto themselves are always happy. So this begins to allude to the very special practices of the bodhisattvas, like the practice of Christ. So let's take, it's just about halfway through these first 6 verses. Let's take a little break, a second stretch. I think Sally had said there would be some tea. Yeah. So just take a little stretch. Quick cuppa. This way of thinking sounds, on one hand, it might resonate within our minds as something incredibly beautiful and inspiring to be able to be like this. At other times, when we're experiencing hardship, you've got pain, your baby's left you, one way or the other. Do you know what I mean? I've mentioned this before. Have you heard my slogan for this, maybe this 5 or 6 years, is the heart essence of all blue music is that one phrase, right? My baby left me. It is, isn't it? What are the blues? It's literally my baby left me. And there's one that actually is that. Then, or I lost my tractor. Someone stole my car down at the diner. I lost my job. Something. You lost your beauty. You lost the samsaric blues. Or maybe if there's someone here who's a good. The Dharma blues, yeah. Samsaric blues, we can write one. So these verses may at first seem an irritation, like, oh, come on, I want relief. I don't, what are you talking about? This is foolish. But be patient. This is something very, very profound. It's not superficial. It's not head in the clouds, sort of non-applicable and so forth. Therefore, it is due to cowardice that persons avidly pursue their own happiness and so come to suffer. The more we pursue our own happiness, when happiness doesn't come, when there is some suffering, we suffer even more. Say there's some suffering. You've got mosquito bite, or that some fly is flying around your ear and buzzing. The more that you find that irritating, the more that the mind is going to not have any kind of relaxation. There's a famous incident in the Buddha's life that I often refer to when he was manifesting having a fever. There were a few times in his lifetime he acted as though he was sick, and the monks were washing his body, giving bath with towels and so forth. And they asked him, how does the Buddha feel? And I think in the sutras, maybe it sort of talks in the royal third person, sort of, there are great waves of pain coursing through the Buddha's body, but his mind is at ease. When there are great waves of pain coursing through our body, our mind is not at ease, is it? We get more agitated, but we don't have to be agitated. It's just a different way of paying attention. If ordinarily, as we identify with this body aggregate as me, the more we act in that way, the more that becomes insufferable. That feeling, suffering feeling, we can't bear it. Sometimes just to recognize we're in cyclic existence has a whole different perspective, and just relaxing a little bit, saying, while I'm in cyclic existence, this is how it's going to be. I've told this story many times in other situations. Maybe some of you have heard a situation that happened to me at the first meditation course I went to in Kopan Monastery in 1974. I was doing yoga in the morning, and then somewhere in the beginning of the course, we began to recite the mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha, Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni. So during meditation, visualizing Buddha, light coming. And when I was doing this, I was feeling this pain in my heart. And I thought, well, this is not right. This is completely distracted me. There's pain here. I'm trying to recite the mantra, feeling good, and there's pain. And so I made an appointment to see Lama Zopa Rinpoche, to ask him if maybe the yoga was contradicting. Maybe in Tibetan Buddhism you're not supposed to do yoga or something. I thought, and maybe there's some contradiction. So before the interview came, this is often the case, I was listening to one lecture, as you probably are now, sort of half daydreaming, half paying attention. And I heard something Rinpoche saying, heart is the nature of fire. So I paid attention. What was he saying? He said, while we're in cyclic existence, this is the nature of cyclic existence, to be suffering. And the more we don't recognize that, the more we rebel against that, like here in this verse, willingly taking suffering of others onto themselves. Those who do so are always happy. Not willingly accepting, not even just being there and accepting the suffering, but feeling some resentment. That makes it worse. There's a tension in the heart. If you let go of that, at least that mental suffering is gone, rather than thinking how resentful I am of this, how my life has been ruined, my baby's left me, my brilliance is gone, my reputation is gone. And so I tried that. The next meditation, when we're doing it, I thought, okay, whatever pain there is in my heart, this is my karma. This is what Rinpoche was saying. This is all the suffering that we experience is due to our past karma. So as I began to recite the mantra, I thought, okay, whatever suffering that's there, it's going to be there. I'll just accept that and recite the mantra. And the pain went away completely. So I was so excited during the next coffee break, soybean coffee break. I told some of the other people about this. I said, Rinpoche said, he answered my question before I even had a chance to have the interview with him. I was all excited, and they said, what was it? He said, they were all excited. What was it? And I said, remember when he said, heart is the nature of fire? And they all went, what are you talking about? He said, heat is the nature of fire. Come on, give me a break. Heart is not the nature of fire. Heat is the nature of fire. It's almost as though we hear what we need to hear, isn't it? As the Buddha gives one exposition, everyone in the audience hears it according to what they need to hear. Heart is the nature of fire. So I think that's very much, there is some truth to all of these different methods that we'll be alluding to as we read these different verses, have great benefit, each and every one of them, just as though every one of Buddha's so-called 84,000 Dharma teachings, they're all antidotes to some particular way of misapprehending the world. 84,000 afflictions, it said. So even just thinking, life doesn't, while I'm in cyclic existence, life is not going to be offering me a rose garden. Well, maybe in a sense, there's thorns. It's while we're in cyclic existence, we're going to suffer. So it's no surprise that my baby leaves me. There's no surprise that I'm going to be criticized sometime, that things don't go well, no matter how I kind of construct my life. Go to college, get my degree, meet the nice people, have my condominium, save money. Something's going to happen. If not now, later. So the fourth verse. Now, here, desire is like a jungle of virulent poison. The hero, like the peacock, masters it. The coward, like the crow, perishes. So most of us, myself, I'm kind of coward, so up till now, perishing. So kind of, as Geshe Zopa mentions in his commentary. Did you read the commentary, some of you? Yeah. What's the difference here? When it says now and here, what are they referring to? Did you read? You didn't get a chance, okay. Well, it was good to read. Did you read? No. It was okay. I'm afraid to call on anyone because you didn't read. Okay. Who read? I know Diana must have read. She's very thorough. You forgot.
The class started.
Pardon?
I've forgotten it.
You've forgotten what? Okay.
I haven't read it. I'd like to take a stab at it.
Okay. What?
It felt like we was just talking to the reader as in their present situation. Now, your present situation, what you're stuck in.
I think it's referring to this is sort of indicating the person has now, that we ourselves, kind of implying that we are now, this is talking to the bodhisattva. This is what this text is. What's that? 127? Here means, on the top of 127, here in parentheses, means that you are a bodhisattva, possessed of the courage and compassion developed in the lower levels of practice when you wanted to be quickly liberated from cyclic existence. You first undertook mind training for your own benefit, because we talk about the Mahayana mind training. Also, the Hinayana has its own way of training the mind also, right? Especially in terms of karma and so forth. You first undertook mind training for your own benefit and later for the benefit of others. The word now refers to the fact that you have been properly trained in the past and are now ready to practice with a courageous bodhisattva attitude. So it's worth, if you have a chance, this can, before and after, to read Geshe-la's commentary, any other commentaries that you have, and then fertilize that with rereading the verses, thinking about the meaning, and discussing with your other, you can come over, you can discuss with Dorje in the office or something, or with Ron in the kitchen, Clayton while he's pounding out the puja tables, whatever. So now, here, desire is like the jungle of virulent poison. So it isn't just desire, but that's the main thing that's being talked about here, because in one sense, on the verbal level, it seems to be talking about the bodhisattva practice rather than the tantric practice. And the bodhisattvas are not renowned to take hatred and other kinds of afflictions into the path as much as they're able to utilize desire in the path, especially within their own continuum, and then also to be able to transform the other outer poisons. Now here, desire is like a jungle of virulent poison. The hero, like the peacock, masters it. The coward, like the crow, perishes. So the coward here, the crow, is the bird that tries to emulate the bodhisattva, tries to emulate the peacock, eating the virulent poisons of attachment, maybe trying to practice, say if we talk about Tantra, trying to practice Tantra without renunciation, without bodhicitta. Gets caught up in sexual desire, gets caught up in anger, thinking that that's good somehow, not actually being able to do it. So that it causes them to perish rather than to enhance their own practice.
Could I actually ask a
Yeah,
question?
you can actually ask a question.
I mean, I certainly can't speak for any of the people who appear to me to be extraordinary or ordinary. I don't really know what they are. But I know my own mind. I'm sort of like the crow.
Mhm.
So I'm trying, but I don't have renunciation. I haven't realized renunciation. I haven't realized bodhicitta. But I'm trying to munch on poison and make some progress. I mean, what?
So we can do it to a certain extent now. This is like the way that we do it now is using the outer conditions. This is how we can, before we actually develop the actual bodhicitta and realization of emptiness, when we can actually utilize the inner desires and the inner poisons within our own mind, that garden. So we deal with the outer garden, the outer situations that take place to us. We can transform them into something that enhances our path. That's usually, when we talk about the Mahayana thought training, that's one of the essential ingredients, isn't it? You know the verse Michael and I were just talking about in break about from Lama Chopa that goes, when the world and the inhabitants therein are filled with the fruits of their past negative deeds, and undesired suffering falls like rain. Does that sound familiar? I mean, I don't mean the verse, but I mean in your life. Undesired suffering falls like rain. Please grant me blessings to transform these adverse conditions into a path, essentially enhancing our spiritual growth by seeing those outer conditions as the exhausting of my negative karma. To feel it's like your debt has been eliminated. You had this big credit card debt, and suddenly something you've done, you got in an accident, and suddenly you were thinking how bad it was to be in the accident, but you realized that the court settlement has just paid off your credit card debt. It's a bad example, but maybe something like that. Maybe not a bad example. That makes sense to you, doesn't it? Yeah, I know some people that actually enjoyed that. So, this is one of the prime ways that we can practice, even before we have bodhicitta and realization of emptiness, to help to train in that, to use the outer conditions, to start to see them as not inherently negative. They're not. How can you say this? Even the pain in our body, even the outer conditions, are not inherently negative. They can be viewed as positive. From one point of view, as seeing them as exhausting our negative karma. That's not the only way. There are many other things too. It's giving me a chance to practice patience. It's causing my pride to diminish. It's giving me a chance to start thinking about important things of life, about spirituality. My whole life could have been completely caught up and happy. I could have been the Wall Street executive or the IBM, this or that, or the park ranger or whatever. My whole life could have been very pleasant, but I might never have been impelled to practice spirituality until this happened. So there are different ways of looking. Rather than seeing it as a problem, seeing it as our guru.
But it sounds like you're saying that if you're like the crow emulating the peacock, you actually become the peacock, right? So,
No.
because if you're doing
The
that,
crow, it means the individual who is not yet trained in bodhicitta and emptiness, trying to practice the tantric, the inner garden, trying to use attachment in the path, trying to use their own anger as enhancing their path, thinking that, maybe not even thinking of it as spiritually, not even thinking of tantra, thinking that attachment is good, thinking that hatred is good, that just It doesn't. That food, that virulent poison, doesn't cause them to become more beautiful.
Okay.
Causes them to perish.
Okay,
Ordinary
so they're
beings like
not emulating the peacock. They are doing the same actions, but they don't have the same motivation.
some might be trying to practice Tantra, say, and don't yet have the prerequisites. There's a whole spectrum of things that the analogy could be referring to, right? Some beings like ourselves might be trying to practice Tantra without the prerequisites, and that can actually cause us to degenerate our path rather than enhance it. You know. But here, when we're talking about the outer garden, you know, seeing all of the things within cyclic existence that we're experiencing as something that can enhance our path, enhance our spiritual growth. It's just a matter of turning the mind in a different way. There's something so interesting, you know. Saturday night, you're sitting alone at home, you know, and everyone's out at the party at the Buckethead, was it? Everyone's gone to Buckethead. You went to Buckethead. I didn't. I was sitting. Everyone's having a good time except me. I'm all alone, you know, looking at it that point of view. Otherwise, you can just turning the mind a different way and say, I'm alone. I don't have to make anyone happy. I don't have to, you know, play the usual kind of games. I could do things that I have been putting off. Just turning the mind a little, just the orientation. All of those years of resentment or you know, hurt can be, when the mind is oriented in the right direction, can change things very much. Yeah.
Isn't this the point that not practicing Tantra until you have some good sense of renunciation?
Say that. I thought there was.
Isn't this the point of this? Is that, I mean,
That's one of the points. There's the book.
if you're practicing Tantra too soon before you have some good renunciation and not quite so desire-driven at least,
Mm-hmm.
that it might
Right.
send you backwards.
Right. That's one of the points. But there's a lot of different illusions going on because it's talking about, on one level, it's also talking about the bodhisattva practice, even for beings, the beings of the Hinayana path, to try to stay within cyclic existence for sentient beings without bodhicitta. They're like the crow in that example also. Okay, they'd get fed up in that, and they, instead of enhancing their spiritual practice without the sense of bodhicitta, without great sense of always meditating on compassion and so forth, would destroy their practice. Even their enhancement of their Hinayana practice would be degenerated if they were trying to practice that way, I think. Mm-hmm. So, 5, how can persons concerned only with their own desires master this poison? If they involve themselves in the other afflictions as well, it will cost them their chances for emancipation, just like the crow. So people that are concerned only with their own desires has many different meanings. Here it could mean the Hinayana practitioner trying to emulate the bodhisattva. It can mean the person who's trying to practice Tantra but doesn't have the right prerequisites yet of renunciation and bodhicitta, trying to practice Tantra. Only concerned with their own desires, like trying to, thinking that you're practicing Tantra, but, engaging in the pleasures of the senses just for the sake of enjoying that, not actually enhancing your tantric practice. Thus the bodhisattva roams like the peacock in the forest of cyclic existence, converting the afflictions, which are like a jungle of virulent poisons, into an elixir. So this is sort of explicitly, in one sense, talking about the afflictions within the bodhisattva's own continua, right? Continuum. Transforming it into an elixir. Willingly embracing the afflictions, the hero shall conquer the poison. So one of the ways that just on that same line, one of the ways the bodhisattvas often are able to transform let's say, the hatred in their mind or the attachment in their mind is through the practice of Tonglen. You know Tonglen, right? Do you know, Michael, what Tonglen is? Tongwa in Tibetan means giving. Lenpa means to take. We say in English, giving, how do we say, giving and taking? Or taking and giving. Giving and taking. The order here of the words is not necessarily how they're practiced. In fact, the great gurus say that when one practices, one should first give and then take. But anyway, what this refers to is a kind of meditative method that's based on seeing the shortcomings of cherishing ourself. That's the reason that we're suffering. Both self-grasping believes I exist, that there is a real experiencer of this suffering, the pain in my life, in my body, whatever, the desires that I have. There's a real experiencer over back there. That's one of the problems. And the self-cherishing that cherishes that self and wants it to always be the experiencer of pleasure and not to be the experiencer of what's unpleasant. One has to see the disadvantages of cherishing the self and the advantages of cherishing others. Then, on the basis of understanding that willingly taking on, experiencing the suffering that one can't avoid, rather than feeling resentful about it, it's just a different turn of the mind. Thinking, by my experiencing this suffering, may all beings be free of pain, be free of headache, be free of back pain, be free of cancer, be free of whatever suffering I'm experiencing. By my experiencing this ignominy of losing my high position, of losing my friends, my lover leaving, my baby leaving, may others be free of this. And imagining all the other people's experience of that suffering coming to you, and you're experiencing it willingly now for their benefit. That kind of practice, though, almost at first, without any training, that would be like the crow trying to emulate the peacock. So that's what we're going to try to learn how to do during this course, to be able to really practice that kind of training, to do Tonglen. Because we often are told the great value of that meditation Tonglen, right? But I think my own experience is that unless you actually have some understanding of the disadvantages of cherishing yourself and the advantages of cherishing others, and you have some desire to act that way, it doesn't, it's not going to have any effect on your mind. So this is what we're going to try to learn. We're trying to learn remember we said the vital points. The vital point, how to get rid of self-cherishing. We have to we have to identify self-cherishing, find its vital point, Just the point, just exactly where to get rid of it. When you do Tonglen, you can different ways of doing it. You can imagine breathing in the suffering of all sentient beings. We talked about this before? Yeah. Breathe out all suffering. Breathe out all my happiness. No problem. Maybe if you do like that, maybe that's not touching the vital point. But if you breathe in the suffering of others and there's incredible worry in your mind, maybe I'm going to get cancer, maybe I'm going to have this pain all the rest of my life. Maybe you're actually touching that. Maybe that's when there would be some kind of authentic experience of giving and taking. Geshe Nawandharge, who was one of my teachers, who wrote also, taught extensively in India for many years, there was a commentary of his on this. I liked one little comment he made in regard to this verse. He was talking about Atisha, who is sort of in a sense, the proliferator of these teachings, because Atisha's guru wrote this text, and Atisha supposedly translated it when he was in Tibet. And when Atisha came to Tibet, he brought this Indian cook with him. You know the story of Atisha's cook? You know the story of Atisha's cook. Atisha brought this sort of cantankerous cook along with him, And other people who were in the household with Atisha, who considered him their guru, their lord, and everything, they would say, Lord Atisha, why don't you get rid of this cook? He's incredibly, troublesome and, always criticizing you behind your back and always big problem for us. And Atisha looked very, very surprised, and he said, if I got rid of him, with whom would I practice patience? You've heard that story, right? I mean, for us, if I didn't, you could think of it another way. If I didn't have this pain, with what would I practice patience? If I didn't have this enemy, with whom would I practice patience? I remember there was one of my fellow colleague monks at Kopan, dear monk, who had to be the disciplinarian one time. He was the gegu, what we call gegu. And he was a little zealous in his disciplinary actions. And I remember once, I was the one who wanted to go to all of the classes and all of the memorizations. But I remember him once coming around to my room in the morning saying, there's going to be memorization. We're studying Abhidharma in the Gompa. If you're not there, you're not getting dinner. I said, that must have been something his dad said to him. So otherwise, where would he have come up with this? You're not getting dinner. Anyway, he was a little bit, I'm going to say thorn is the right word, a little bit, kind of, the thorn. The sand in our shoe for quite a few of us, for some time. But when he was sent off to another assignment somewhere, and I realized after that there was this lack in my life. Although there was a superficial peace, like, phew, okay, it's gone. There wasn't a chance to practice patience, because every time there was that irritation, the mind always had to go back to the Dharma and find an antidote within one's own mind, compassion for him, understanding my own delusions. This is karma. This is a chance for patience, and so forth. So that's the background to this statement. So Atisha supposedly said, he brought that Indian cook, right? But after a certain time, he sent him back to India saying, having met the Tibetans, the Indian is no longer needed. You understand?
I wanted to ask a question. I think maybe I don't understand, because when I'm reading this, it seems like the idea of the crow, it seems like to me really simple, that the crow kind of is all of our animalistic nature to I want this, and I need to have this. And it seems like to put it in terms of tantra and not, it's my understanding is that until you're enlightened, we all have that desire, problem, period. And it just seems to me when I read this that it seems really simple.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to.
That's because you're very
understand.
astute. It's very astute. It's very simple. It probably is, on one level, it's very simple. On another level, there's a lot of subtlety here, because actually, much before enlightenment, we no longer have afflictions. The bodhisattva, as they progress, when we were talking the salam the weekend, when the bodhisattvas reach the 8th bhumi, the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, the so-called pure bhumis, they no longer have any of the afflictions, no anger, no attachment whatsoever. They could be called arhats. They might be called Mahayana arhats. Because even the Hinayana arhats, although they're not enlightened, they have no afflictions. But there's a big difference. In the case of the arhats, not only, they don't have the afflictions, but they still have self-cherishing thought that keeps them striving for their own nirvana, and they still have the obstructions to omniscience besides self-cherishing thought. The bodhisattva on the pure bhumis, they don't have the afflictions any longer. They don't have self-cherishing thought, but they still have some subtle obscuration in their mind that prevents them from seeing the two levels of truth at the same time, what's called the obstructions to omniscience.
Is that the clinging to inherent existence of the...
No, that's completely gone, the clinging to inherent existence. There is some imprint of that that causes them still to not be able to perceive the two levels of truth at the same time, conventional reality and ultimate reality. They have to alternate between meditative equipoise on emptiness and arising from that, going into meditative equipoise, arising. They can do it in flash of an eye, in an instant, shortest instant. They can enter into equipoise and rise from that, but they can't perceive both simultaneously. They can't perceive all phenomena as the Buddhas can. So there's a lot of different levels of spiritual growth that the crow might be referring to. So it is true. It could be just seen as having. So what did you say? Our animalistic nature. Something like that? Yeah, that sounds nice. Yeah, could be kind of like that. Yeah.
But can I ask one more?
Yeah. Why not?
So, but when the Buddha was sitting under the Bodhi tree and he was being tested with all like the desire objects and the fear, the demons and the beautiful women.
Right.
So that was his desire being tested. That was like his crow-like nature, right? To see if he would turn away from his enlightenment and go and be afraid or go after that. I mean, that's kind of my understanding of that. Is that correct?
Well, it depends. The story of the situation of Buddha under the Bodhi tree, from the Mahayana point of view, Buddha was already enlightened, eons before that. And what he was showing on earth was kind of a demonstration for the welfare of others. And he was, the legend, the story of him under the Bodhi tree and encountering his own desires on the eve of his just about to make great spiritual realizations, has so much meaning for us. Sometimes we may be tested. We might be in a sense ready to make some kind of leap, spiritual realization. But there might be all sorts of entanglements that are still, waving, the sirens. I'm not a very good enticement, but anyway, you can imagine what I mean. The sirens can be there, and the flags and the temptation. Someone offers you money or someone offers you pleasure, condominium,
By the ocean.
Yeah, by the ocean. Companionship, something like that. So the Buddha's, all of the Buddha's activities that we call the 12 deeds, they were all done it said that all of the Buddhas that come in this eon, this fortunate eon when 1,000 Buddhas will come, they will all perform 12 deeds. Not exactly in the same way that Shakyamuni did, but in a similar way. There'll be a descent from Tushita and entering into the mother's womb and a miraculous birth and showing excellence as a youth and so forth, all of these various activities. And then leaving home, finding the middle way, years of asceticism, finding the middle way, overcoming the forces of Mara under the Bodhi tree, achieving enlightenment, then turning the wheel of Dharma and so forth. They'll all have those activities for the benefit of others. So it wasn't so much that Buddha was being tested outside, but this was something that he knew in his omniscience, that all the Buddhas know that this is what we need to see, the sequence of events, that this is something that we can do. Okay. So these first 6 verses are, in a sense, kind of a prelude to the material of the text. So, if for next week you have a chance to read the next, 7, 8 verses, maybe 15 or so, maybe it's 16 on page 3, if you have this printout, and if you have a chance to read some commentary and think about it, also to review what we've said, and if you have questions, write them down so you don't forget them. Then you can also discuss with one another. You can, Amy, Venerable, do you have an email number? Can they email you with questions if they want? If you want to debate with Venerable, you can email your questions to her or to anyone else. And Yeah, see if what we've said makes sense. So let's say, any other questions before we finish up? Yes, Venerable.
At what point in the path do you actually start practicing this text? I mean, does it come at what point in the Lam Rim, at the stages of Lam Rim? Do you have to really develop
I think
the lower school, the middle school? Is it after you've sort of done the high, or partway through the higher school?
my understanding is that in one sense, this is talking about certain of the practices, especially of the first 6 verses, are talking about people who have already developed renunciation and have a sense of bodhicitta. It's talking about the ideal. But the text itself is something that's applicable on all of our levels, that once we start to have an aspiration for the Mahayana path, we can utilize all of these verses, especially the subsequent ones, in understanding karma, understanding the events that take place as the wheel of sharp weapons of our karma coming back from the actions that we've done in the past. If your baby leaves you, you left others before. If your camera is stolen, you've to recognize this is the wheel of sharp weapons coming back from you having stolen before. This is one way. That's not the only way that we'll talk about. That's one way of understanding the adverse conditions, to start to take your attention away from them, where you're projecting upon them someone else is the fault, or some system is the fault, or it's George W. Bush, or it's Saddam Hussein's fault or something. When we project outside, rather than looking inside, we project outside to find the fault. It's a never-ending kind of thing. This is what most of our politicians in the world are doing now. We always are trying to find the fault outside, isn't it? Destroy the outer enemy, rather than looking inside and finding where the real cause of it is. So that's one strategy that's talked about. Also, calling upon Yamantaka to develop our wisdom, to see all of these as an opportunity to see through the true existent appearance of all of these events that seem to be insufferable obstacles to our spiritual practice, to see them as open and capable of being seen in another way, and actually not obstacles at all. So talking about karma, talking about emptiness, talking about using these events, as is alluded to here, willingly embracing the afflictions, willingly even taking on the suffering of others, like in Tonglen, talking about compassion and bodhicitta as an antidote. Talking about impermanence. These are the main kind of antidotes, I think, that are used to they're mentioned through the text. So they're not. It doesn't require someone already have renunciation or bodhicitta, but I think someone who is leaning in the direction, who's open-minded about the Mahayana, someone who is aspiring, has great respect and appreciation for that path, can be somehow empowered by these kinds of verses to go deeper into actually finding the antidotes to the afflictions, finding antidotes especially to the self-cherishing thought.
You may have answered my question, I'm not sure, but, if the bodhisattva is doing this Tonglen, and they're, giving the happiness and bringing in the suffering and stuff, unless they're really taking that suffering from another person, it's not really helping the other person, I don't think. It might help their own self-cherishing or to lessen it or something like that, but I can't see that it's really helping the suffering of another person if it's just this mental exercise. And also, I have several things going on in my mind right now. You want me
Okay, no, let's just do one. Let's do that one first.
Okay.
So
But this goes with the whole idea that why not just eliminate their suffering, and where I don't have to take it, and they don't have to have it either, but just eliminate it, and move on.
Okay, right. Good question. Right. So get out the salve, get out the bandage, splint the arm and stop doing Tonglen. Just get on with it. Right, I agree with you. When you can, do that. But a lot of times you can't. The suffering of sentient beings is due to their karma. Even you try to ameliorate the situation right now, which is helpful, you should, as much as you can, you eliminate the hunger right now, but that's not going to prevent that person from being hungry in the future. How can you do that? How can you eliminate their suffering in the future? By yourself becoming Buddha and leading them out of that.
Teach them how to grow crops or something.
Yeah.
So they won't have them.
Right.
Doing something,
Right.
constructive instead of just saying, well, I'm going to take on the suffering.
Well, there's great meaning to this, because this practice is not of one only of the bodhisattva, because this is a practice that's used to develop bodhicitta also, Tonglen. Because the greatest obstacle to developing bodhicitta is the self-cherishing thought. And this particular meditation is used in the method of equalizing and exchanging self with others. Do you know the two methods to develop bodhicitta? One called the 7 methods of cause and effect, and one called the method of equalizing self and others. The method of equalizing self and others is more applicable to beings of sharper faculties, especially the faculty of wisdom. Having understood that there is no self, then they realize the self-cherishing attitude is senseless, and they could be cherishing others. They see the self-cherishing attitude as a great obstacle, and they have the courage to eradicate it. They see the disadvantages of it, the advantages of cherishing others, and so they consciously practice as much as possible taking on the suffering of others, if not in reality, in imagination, and giving up their happiness, giving the victory to others, giving their happiness to others. So that mindset allows them to be able to do so in reality. Then when there's a chance to lose the argument, because you've practiced this kind of thing, you can do it. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to do it. To lose the argument, to give the victory to others, to accept the suffering and so forth. Also, there can be some effect from doing Tonglen. It's not as though it has no effect at all. It's said that when the individuals involved have some karmic relationship from having created virtue in the past together, that it is possible for one meditator to take on some obstacle of the other. So often when His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, there's some obstacle to their life, to his appearing in the world. Not as though he has a personal obstacle, but that we have the obstacle to being able to see his continuing life. Sometimes the meditators, we do Tonglen to take on that suffering ourselves, because we may have created virtuous karma with respect to His Holiness in previous lives due to our faith in Him and so forth, our guidance, being guided by Him. One of my teachers, Serkon Rinpoche, Serkon Senchab Rinpoche, when he passed away, that we heard the story of how he passed away. I think it was in Lahore, or where's Lahore? Is that in Pakistan? No, in somewhere in maybe Spiti. He knew that His Holiness was meant to go to Geneva, and it was only found out later. I think Serkon Rinpoche knew with his clairvoyance what was happening, that while His Holiness was about to land in Geneva, the Swiss government said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we cannot provide the bodyguards for you because Yasser Arafat is flying in and we have to put them on him." And so Serkon Rinpoche, at that time, Serkon Rinpoche told another old Tibetan Lama, "Let's do Tonglen for His Holiness." And they did Tonglen together for some hours, and then Serkon Rinpoche bid him good night, and then he lay down in the lion posture and passed away, died. The next day it was found out that just at the last minute, Yasser Arafat's flight changed directions, went somewhere else, and the bodyguards were able to come and protect the Dalai Lama. So, okay, that's what did they say? Anecdotal. I'm not proving that Serkon Rinpoche, great beings like that, that actually proves that, but that's what's believed by the great lamas, that sometimes, in some cases, we can actually affect, we can take on the obstacles and suffering of others like that. So we'll continue afterwards if we have some other questions, but let's just finish here with a short dedication meditation. So again, try to recall that peaceful state of mind because of familiarization. Go back to the clarity of your mind. And in one instant, even though there might be many thoughts and doubts going through your mind, just see through them. See them as transparent. Focus on the spaciousness of your mind to calm it. The clear light nature of your mind. And again, recalling that we've created some virtuous karma tonight, roots of virtue, due to our motivation at the beginning. And maybe having some instance of aspiring to this kind of path of the bodhisattva, great courageous path. These karmic roots will definitely ripen in cyclic existence, if not destroyed. They'll definitely ripen only as pleasure, as something experienced as relief, what we call contaminated pleasure. Cannot experience as suffering. But unless we dedicate it, it could be experienced in such a way that it becomes detrimental to our spiritual growth. It might just be samsaric pleasure. To try to orient it toward that goal of our ultimate enlightenment through the mental factor of aspiration, wish, desire. May it be, they should ripen in such a way, may they ripen in such a way that they bring about my ultimate and awakening. All of the afflictions destroyed, the self-cherishing thought, self-grasping, the obstructions to omniscience, with total bliss of the mind, total control, total power, and beneficence, compassion, working for the welfare of others, may I then be able to really solve people's problems, lead all sentient beings out of suffering. Due to these merits, may I quickly achieve enlightenment for the welfare of all sentient beings. So I'll stay around a little bit longer if some of you want to chat, but otherwise, like I said, try to read, review what we've done. If you haven't read the commentary, if you have a chance, it's very good. You don't have to, of course, but if you have a chance. And if you'd like to read ahead, see you next time. And if you have a chance, tomorrow evening again, Venerable Amy Miller will be teaching, not tomorrow, day after tomorrow, will be teaching on mind here, and on Thursday there's the class on lorik, awareness and knowing. A little more tough, a little tougher bones. Some of you choose just right for physicists. And see you then.